You won't discover the biggest problem about buying a lake home during the showing. You're going to discover it 6 months after closing, when you're already settled in. I've been here 23 years selling waterfront real estate, and I've watched these issues turn dream properties into money pits worth over $50,000, $100,000, even more. So let's find out what those are so you can avoid them. Issue number 1, seasonal versus year-round lake access. Island properties. Picture buying your dream home and then finding out mid-February that you can't simply get there. That's not some worst-case scenario. That's what actually happens to buyers who fully don't understand seasonal access before they close. The lakes here, including Winnipesaukee, freeze completely over in the winter. Island properties hit a window in late fall and again in early spring, when the ice is too thin for a snowmobile and too dangerous for a boat. No airboat, no hovercraft, no float plane. You're just not getting there or getting out. It sounds like the start of a really good horror movie, but it's not as bad if you take proper precautions. Island ownership done right is genuinely one of the best things about this market. When the carrying costs are lower, the taxes are assessed at a fraction of the equivalent mainland home, and everyone understands it's a true seasonal property. It's a fantastic asset to pass down through the generations. The problem isn't wanting or buying island properties. The issues start if you're buying one thinking it works differently than it does. And keep that tax structure in mind, because when we get to associations and fees later in this video, you'll see how much ownership structure can change your total cost. So beyond the winter access, here's the detail that trips people up even more. Just because you have a house on an island doesn't mean you have a place to park or store your boat on the mainland. A lot of island properties don't automatically come with mainland dock rights or vehicle parking. You may need to secure a separate slip, a second small lot, or pay annual fees just to reach your home. Bottom line, never buy an island property or any seasonal lake access home without fully understanding the gaps, knowing your access windows, your mainland situation, and your tax picture. Because the lower assessment that makes it affordable is also the reason it's not a year-round property, and that matters the moment you go to sell. But seasonal access is only the beginning. The next issue looks completely fine on the surface until you get right up to the water. Now, if you're watching this and thinking about buying waterfront real estate in the Lakes region, this is exactly where my team comes in. The Dow Group is the #1 real estate team in New Hampshire. I personally focus on the Lakes region, and we have area experts dedicated to the mountains and seacoast as well. My contact info is in the description below. Feel free to reach out. Now back to it. Issue number 2, seawall, retaining wall, and dock failure. Most buyers walk a waterfront property, look at the boathouse, decide everything looks fine from the deck, and move on. That call has led to some of the most expensive surprises I've seen in over 2 decades of doing this. So here's the thing. On Lake Winnipesaukee and throughout the Lakes region, a huge portion of what you're actually paying for has nothing to do with the house. The crib dock, the multi-slip dock, the boathouse, the stone retaining wall are all extraordinarily valuable, but they're also wood and water. 2 things that don't play nice together over time. New Hampshire winters bring solid lake ice, and when that ice starts moving in the spring, it pushes with enormous force on everything along the shoreline: retaining walls, dock supports, and boat foundations. Structures that look solid from the deck can be quietly falling apart below the waterline. It's not unheard of to see a $500,000 project on the water just to fix things that a buyer thought they were getting for free. Now here's what makes it worse. If you have a structure that fails or falls in or needs to be replaced, you have to get permits to make sure that you keep that grandfathering status. If you let them go and you don't have the money to fix them right away, you could lose that grandfathering aspect of your property, which you paid a lot of money to obtain in the beginning. Never buy a waterfront home just because the dock looks fine from the deck. Bring in a contractor who knows lakes and knows DES permits, not just a standard home inspector. The inspection you skip is the problem you own. Structures above the waterline are one thing, but the next issue lives entirely on paper, and it can cost you thousands every single year before anything even goes wrong. Issue number 3, flood zone properties and insurance surprises. Your lender finds a designation on a government map, and suddenly your monthly payment just went up, and you had no idea it was coming. FEMA floodplain maps place portions of New Hampshire lakefronts and river properties in special flood hazard areas. When your lender sees that, Flood insurance becomes mandatory as a condition of the mortgage, not optional, not negotiable. Layer that on top of an already high waterfront premium and the insurance bill starts getting serious fast. We're talking potentially thousands of dollars per year in extra carrying costs, just from where your property sits on a map. Over a 10-year hold, that can quietly become a 5-figure expense even without a single claim. And if the property combines a flood zone designation with things like a walkout basement, a low-lying mechanical system, or a boathouse, one bad event can mean major uninsured expenses and months of downtime. There's another insurance situation that surprises almost every buyer in this market, and we'll get into it when we cover buried oil tanks. Yeah, we're going there. Never make an offer on a lake home without checking the FEMA flood maps and getting an actual insurance quote, not an estimate, a real quote before you go under contract. Being on the wrong side of the line changes your monthly payment in ways you weren't budgeting for. A flood zone designation isn't always a deal breaker, but it's always a number you need to know before you fall in love with the place. Now, flood zones are at least visible on a map. The next issue hides in the fine print of documents most buyers never even think to ask for: lake associations, shared beaches, and deeded access. 3 words have cost more relocators more money and more heartbreak than almost anything else in this market. Deeded beach access. It sounds incredible. You're picturing a quiet stretch of shoreline that's yours. But in a lot of Lakes Region communities, what deeded beach access actually means is a fractional right to a shared parcel. A common beach that might serve 30, 40, even 50 or more homeowners. That's the emotional part. The financial part is just as real. Annual association fees can run from a few $100s to well into the low thousands, depending on what they maintain. Capital expenses, road repairs, beach work, dam maintenance, or common area upgrades can quietly add thousands more just over a few years, stacked right on top of your mortgage and property taxes. And the restrictions can be just as significant as the fees. A lot of associations control dock size, mooring placement, exterior changes, and parking. Buy the wrong property and the dock that you thought you could use is actually being shared by many others in the association. Buyers who thought they were getting private waterfront and found out after closing that they're sharing a tiny beach with 40 other owners can feel completely stuck. The resale pool expects the same trade-offs, and the market doesn't always give you a discount for them. Before you fall in love with any lake property, ask specifically what waterfront rights come with it. Get the association documents, read the restrictions, know the fees, because the difference between private shoreline and shared access is the difference between 2 totally different properties. And the listing won't tell you which one you're actually buying. One thing at the Dow Group we tell all of our buyers to do is talk to the association president. They may have agreed to special assessments or monies that are going to be spent on improvements, but sometimes it's just a rumor. And unless you ask the question to someone in the know, like the association president, you will never know until after you own the property. Association documents tell you a lot, but there's one issue on these properties no document will fully prepare you for, and it lives underground. Issue number 5, septic system problems near lakes. When buyers come to the Lakes region, they have never had to think about a septic system in their lives. And that's exactly why this one hits hardest. Rural and lakefront properties here aren't on municipal sewer. They run on septic. Older systems, especially on tight lake lots, were built for a different era with different standards and sometimes with seasonal water supplies that come straight from the lake or an aging well. A new or replacement septic system in New Hampshire typically runs somewhere between $14,000 and $24,000 or even higher. On a tough lakefront site with a tight lot, you're pushing into the mid-20s to 30s range before any complications come into play. But the number isn't even the worst part, believe it or not. On a small lake, you may not have the physical space to rebuild a system that supports the same bedroom count as what you bought. So if you purchase a 4-bedroom home, then the septic fails, you might only be permitted to replace it with a 3-bedroom system. That's a legal 4-bedroom becoming a legal 3-bedroom, and that hits resale value. There's also a well setback. Modern standards require you to be at least 75 feet from your neighbor's septic. On a tight lakefront lot, there may simply not be room to fit a new well if the current one ever comes into question. Never buy a lakeside home without a full septic evaluation and a clear picture of what you'd be allowed to rebuild if the system ever fails. On some of these lots, a failing system doesn't just cost you $20,000 to $30,000, it can permanently drop the legal bedroom count, and that follows the property forever. Septic problems are expensive and frustrating, but the next one is the issue that can quietly push you into six-figure territory before you even see it coming. Issue number 6, buried oil tanks and failing heating systems. On every New Hampshire property disclosure, there is one checkbox that should grab your attention. The second, it's marked yes. Underground storage tanks. When a seller checks that box, most buyers nod, assume it's handled, and move on. That assumption can cost people an enormous amount of money. Underground heated oil tanks in New Hampshire rust from the inside out. You can't see it. The ground covers it entirely. When they leak, the oil moves into the soil and can reach groundwater. Cleanup and remediation routinely run into the tens of thousands of dollars. In serious cases, when the contaminants reach neighboring structures or groundwater, costs can exceed hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, here's the legal reality that stops most buyers cold. That liability follows the current owner, not the person who put the tank in 40 years ago. You. Tank removal itself is manageable, typically 1,500 to 3,500 range, and when the soil test comes back contaminated, that's the number that explodes. A lot of insurers either won't cover underground tanks or heavily restrict their policies, which leaves you exposed both environmentally and financially at the same time. Now pair that with this. A lot of older lake homes in the Lakes region still run oil furnaces from the 1970s and 80s. They may pass a basic inspection, but they tend to fail in January, the worst time possible to be without heat in New Hampshire. A fuel heating system replacement, including labor, new tanks, and venting, typically runs in the high 8s to the 15,000 range. When you see an older home with an older oil-based system, build that replacement cost into your offer before you sign it. A seller who casually checks yes to underground storage tanks and you don't dig deeper isn't just leaving you a paperwork issue. They may be leaving you a six-figure environmental liability with your name on it. 6 issues, 6 real money pits, and every single one of them is avoidable if you know what to do before making your offer. So here's the good news. Every issue we covered today is manageable if you know how to look for it before you close. Start with specialized inspections. A standard home inspector covers the house. Waterfront needs more than that. Get a septic evaluation from someone who knows lake lots and New Hampshire DES standards. Bring in a contractor or shoreline specialist to look at the dock, the crib, retaining walls, above the water and below it, and get a tank sweep for buried oil tank storage before you finalize anything. Second, read the paperwork. Request association documents before you fall in love with the property. Pull the FEMA flood maps. Ask for any past insurance claims on the property. Review DES permits for waterfront structures. These documents tell you what the seller knows and sometimes what they're hoping you won't ask. Third, understand access. If the property's on an island or a private road, ask the seller directly. How do you get there in February? Who plows? Where do you park on the mainland? Where does the boat go? These questions determine whether the home actually works for your lifestyle. And work with area experts who know these issues cold. I've been doing this for 23 years in the Lakes region. These aren't hypothetical problems to my team and me. We're used to helping our clients through them. Remember, you can reach out at any time. The difference between a dream lake home and a money pit is almost always information, and it's almost always avoidable when you have the right people in your corner. Conclusion: the buyers who end up with a money pit, problems rarely saw them coming because no one told them what to look for before they fell in love with the property. Now you know what they didn't. If you're serious about buying a waterfront in the Lakes region and want someone who knows exactly which questions to ask before making an offer, shoot me an email at adam@thedowgroup.com. I've been doing this for 23 years and I work with a team of experts covering the entire state. So let's make sure your lake home stays a dream. If you're still weighing whether New Hampshire is the right move at all, I've linked my pros and cons video right here. I walk through everything from tax structure to the Four Seasons to what I call the permanent house guest problem that nobody warns you about. It's the perfect next step before you go any further. Okay, I hope these help you with your decision, and thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next one.